This portion of the news brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Rehabilitation for first offenders to become a part of the justice system and change the way justice is meted out for those who, before now, paid dearly for their minor offenses. That was discussed during last evening's session of the Senate.
Tonight, Shanique Miller tells us that it's being hailed as a paradigm shift for the government that protects the dignity of the family.
It has been the experience of offenders for decades, a young person committing a minor crime in a moment of indiscretion, and the incident follows them for the rest of their lives. State Minister in the Ministry of National Security, Keith Bell, says men more often than women are victims of this.
Over the years, we've seen where, as they are charged, they are convicted, they end up with criminal records, Madam President, they cannot get jobs, they cannot travel. When they meet with their counterparts, the young females, of course, they're educated. And so the gap widens, Madam President.
The problem goes even deeper, as Bell, a former senior police officer, says this practice has resulted in many children becoming latchkey kids.
Every day, Madam President, we see where the police are called to homes in a number of areas where children are left in these homes, Madam President. They are called to homes where mothers have to go to work, and when they get there, just the children in the homes. Madam President, that could present a criminal charge. But again, Madam President, in many cases, the police find that the mothers have no one to leave the children with. So what do we do, Madam President? Do we continue to charge and put before the criminal courts, or do we now determine how we could best work out this case, work out the situation, Madam President?
Speaking on the resolution to allow the government to sell the Rodney E. Bain building that would eventually become a family and drug court, Maynard Gibson, like Bell, says this new approach to justice is carrying the country into a very different era.
The same kind of professionals, Madam President, who are counselors, psychiatrists, mediators, that same kind of skill is required in the drug rehab court. We actually make sure that our young people are counseled, they are put on a probation, they have to do community service. So all of this kind of support, Madam President, that is also required for our families is reposed in those professionals. We want to see support for families. We want to see support for our young people.
Maynard Gibson says to make the new family and drug courts even more effective, all related agencies like the Department of Social Services will be a part of the rehabilitative process. The family and drug rehab courts will be housed in the Rodney Bain building. Shanique Miller, ZNS Network News.
Residents of North Abaco will soon see further development on the island as a top contractor, China Harbour Engineering Company, gears up to commence construction work on the multi-million-dollar port facility funded by the China Exim Bank and the government.
Well, Chinese officials last night provided an update on that project during a town hall meeting at the Faith Walk Church of God in Cooperstown, Abaco. Our LaDon Davis was also there for that town meeting.
The $39 million port facility to be built by the China Harbour Engineering Company of the Americas, the 11th largest construction company in the world, is not only expected to generate more than 200 new jobs, but pump millions of dollars into that island's economy over the next 2 years. Area Member of Parliament Renato Curry and other local contractors welcome the new development.
There is a great need when it comes to ensuring that our people that live here, not only live here in the north, but the people of Abaco, whether they be contractors, whether they be just common laborers, we would need employment to help sustain themselves and their families.
It will mean a great impact to our business in terms of funding for us to drive our revenue higher, and also very important that my husband and I would be able to hire a lot of the local people. So in terms of jobs, I think it would be a great opportunity for us, and our business will expand.
Being that the economy, I think, in the whole country has been down for a while, now we are being able to get the rebound. A lot of my workers that were sent home or working bi-weekly will be able now probably to seek full employment.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Urban Development Philip Davis says there are a few components of the project he is deeply concerned about, and that is equipment, materials, and labor to finish the project.
There's a quota. Not everyone would be hired, everyone, but it's intended to ensure that as many of those persons who are required for the job, the Bahamians will get the first choice to start working when the project starts. Also, the materials like steel, cement, and whatever else is required for the construction, the nails and the other things, they're first going to source it locally. Now, the only thing that is required is that we have competitive prices.
Senior Business Development Manager for SHAC, Colvin London, says the company's main priority is to provide quality service to the Bahamian people. London also gave an update on the project.
We're just waiting now on the ratification of those designs by the local professional engineer, who will ratify those designs or express any comments or concerns. And then we will send those ratified drawings to Ministry of Works for them to further endorse and ratify.
The wheels are now in motion to host the first in a series of job fairs on the island in the coming days. Meanwhile, officials say they expect to break ground for the first-class port facility in 6 weeks. LaDawn Davis, ZNS Network News.
From the courts, in a matter of hours, jurors are expected to begin deliberations in the first ever human trafficking case involving Chavanese Sasha Gay Hall. While she did not testify, the defense did its best to remind jurors that the prosecution had to prove its case against her beyond a reasonable doubt, while the prosecution contends that they did. Jiminy DeSwain was in court today for the closing arguments of both sides in their final words to jurors.
Director of Public Prosecutions Vanette Graham-Allen outlined to jurors which elements demonstrate that they proved their case against Chavanese Sasha Gay Hall. Graham-Allen explained that the prosecution has to prove that Hall committed the offenses she is facing. The prosecution also had to prove, when considering the offense of trafficking in persons, what act was done, how it was done, and the purpose. Graham-Allen maintained that the accused recruited, transported, transferred, received, and/or facilitated the arrival of both victims into the country. Graham-Allen said this was demonstrated by the witnesses who outlined how they met Hall and how Hall had purchased their tickets to the Bahamas. Their purpose, instead of work as a barmaid or massage therapist, turned into them being forced into prostitution, as outlined by their evidence. The prosecutor also reiterated how the passports of the victims were withheld and how threats were made against them. She said the only way the case was broken was because one of the victims reported it to the police, something Graham-Allen described as a brave act. Graham-Allen also used the opportunity to show jurors there was no collusion, concoction, or fabrication in the prosecution's case. Now, defense attorney Jara Mangra also did his best to convince jurors of his client's innocence in his closing submissions. He told jurors that Hall did not give evidence, noting that it was her legal right. Mangra stressed that his client was not guilty of the charges of trafficking in persons and was not guilty of withholding the travel documents of the two victims involved. He reminded jurors that the accused was presumed innocent until they determined otherwise. The defense attorney told jurors that the prosecution witnesses swore on the Bible, but in his words, they lied with every sinew of their body, particularly the victims and police officers involved in the investigation. Mangra reminded jurors that they only have the prosecution's case, but he said they failed to discharge that burden of proof. Mangra insisted that his client did not recruit, transport, transfer, received, and/or facilitate the arrival of the two victims to the Bahamas for the purpose of exploiting them for prostitution. He urged jurors to acquit Hall. Now that the defense and prosecution have both summed up their cases, the judge will sum up his case to the jurors before they decide the fate of Sasha Gay Hall. Jiminy DeSwain, ZNS Network News.
The government began its shantytown shutdown last summer, and according to the Minister of the Environment, Ken Dorset, this has had many success in many areas, but they're being vigilant to ensure that new shantytowns are not built in other areas. Well, as government prepares for a new fiscal budget, Minister Dorset hopes to secure funding for cleanup efforts and says his ministry will be hitting the Family Islands on this vexing issue next.
But I haven't seen any new construction in some of the areas where we have cleared. And the committee continues to report. But the reality is, I'm hoping that in this budget cycle we're going to be able to make financial provisions for us to move speedily with respect to the removal of those facilities and not find ourselves being challenged monetarily to move once the expiration has happened on notices, and the Ministry of Works under its building control unit has indicated that there is a demolition order, that we have the funds to proceed with demolition. And so we're in Abaco now, so we're working along with the Member of Parliament for North Abaco as well as the Member of Parliament for South Abaco on addressing the concerns in Abaco. But that is the next island that.
Still to come in ZNS Total Sports, the Carifta water polo team gets ready for action. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news was brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.